welcome back to my channel. I am the Spellsinger, and this is my ongoing review of the fighting fantasy series of Gamebooks. And this review is going to give you a quick look at this title and book number, a quick read of the blurb, and then a look at the plot, talk about game mechanics and adventure sheets. I'll run the artwork through this video as usual, and then have a look at my own likes and dislikes, any fun facts, any errors, and finish on a summary and score out of 10 for this book. So, where are we? This is book 28, and this is Phantoms of Fear. This was written by Robin Waterfield back in 1987. So, Robin Waterfield did 4 books for this series, and the artwork for this one was by Ian Miller. So not just the external, the cover, but also the interior artwork as well by Ian Miller. So the whole book by the great Ian Miller. So this is a bit of a classic actually. This is a lot of people's, well, certainly a lot of top 10 records this book has shown up in. So it seems to be quite well liked. I think Robin Waterfield, his style is quite nicely appreciated by a lot of fans from this series. And that coupled with Ian Miller's artwork appears to be a really good combination. But anyway, let's read the blurb for this one. So, a humble wood elf you may be, yet it's you that the gods have chosen to take on Ishtra and his gathering army of evil, chaotic creatures. You must penetrate this force before it becomes invincible, as a Demon Prince Ishtra cannot be overpowered by weapons made by an earthly race, even by the most magical sword of the High Elves. So what can you do against him? Perhaps the Wood Elves' powerful art of dream control can give you the important advantage and allow you to cast spells at vital moments in your adventure. Right, so that's that was the blurb. So the plot for this book. So you're a wood elf. You're not just a sword for hire like you are in most of these books. It's a little bit different. You're a wood elf and you have to journey alone through the forest Afan and defeat this Demon Prince Ishtra. And he's threatening basically the whole kingdom. And there is 2 ways to successfully complete this quest, which results in different kind of final paragraphs. So we've had this before where there's a different way of completing the book and not just one linear route to do so. One is by collecting magic items to kind of defeat Ishtra in the real world. And the second way is by fighting Ishtra in the dream world. So you've got this really cool atmospheric tie-in between the real world and this dream world that you can travel through as well. Now, Phantoms of Fear is a book. It's both interesting, highly original. You play as an elven warrior, shaman, this wood elf, and you've got the ability to enter this dream world and fight these nightmarish creatures within. The ability is what makes you the best candidate for this job to defeat the Demon Prince Ishtra, who's beginning to sort of corrupt the forest Afan with this terrible blight which is spreading from his domain. And he intends to do the same with the whole world, of course, the whole world of Titan eventually, but he's going to start with the forest of Afan. And Ishtra, he's invulnerable to all earthly weapons. And it's only your ability as this shaman wood elf to fight in the dream world which will allow you to win over in the end. So yeah, you play as this wood elf shaman, and you even have a name, which is unusual because usually you're just you. You don't necessarily have a name, unlike Steve Jackson's Appointment with Fear, where your superhero got a name, or you have a name in this one as well. Very unusual for a fighting fantasy book. But the plot resolves around your sort of beloved Afan forest being under threat from this kind of pestilence that's caused by the appearance of this Demon Prince Ishtra. Now, I think what's different about this book is that you can switch between worlds, the real world and the dream world. And in the first half, you get this kind of vision or visions of the future, or of an important information that can help you with your quest or your mission. And in the second half, you can actually move freely through a dream world version of the environment you're in. So there's lots of originality in this book. Robin Waterfield is perfectly placed for this adventure. He has this incredible prose, this style that's kind of unique, and it suits this adventure just right. Yeah, so that's the plot. That leads nicely onto the game mechanics and the adventure sheet for this book. So Phantoms of Fear, it has a new attribute, which is power, and that's a 2d6 plus 6. And it's reduced by 1 every time a spell is cast. So I'll give you the spells in a second. Every time you cast a spell, you reduce your current power score by 1. Power is also used in combat. So when you enter, when you go to sleep or you enter the dream world at various points, you get into all these fights and you can use your power to combat these dream creatures. And you also have the ability, like I say, to cast spells at a cost of 1 power point per spell. So those spells are Protect, Illusion, Weaken, Levitation, Finding, and Fire. So you get to choose all these different spells right at the beginning, whatever you think might suit the mission best. And in this adventure, you begin with no provisions as such, but a choice of one of the 3 standard potions, so Fortune, Strength, and Skill. Now, unfortunately, this mechanic, this power mechanic, is also the book's weakness. You have your spells to cast in the adventure, but each time you do so, it drains your power by 1 point. The thing you need to do is conserve your power for dream combat, meaning you will probably not cast that many spells at all throughout the adventure. I think when I finished this book, I didn't cast any spells. I just hoarded up all my power points for the end battle. But they're there if you want to use them. Also, you can't cast spells in the second half of the book. It's just in the first half. So as you get closer to the Blight and enter the domain of Ishtra, you can't cast your spells anymore. So if you're going to cast them, the beginning of the book is the time to do that. So conserve your power for dream combat. You're not likely to cast too many spells if you're trying to do that. Dream combat is also a bit problematic. You are given your opponent's power score and you must roll 2 dice, okay? So pretty straightforward. If you roll a 2 to 7, you lose 2 power points, all right? And if you roll an 8 to 12, your opponent loses 2 power points. So that's stacked quite highly in your opponent's favor. So it's really tough. I don't think you can die from it. You just wake up, but yeah, it's hard to fight those battles, and of course, if you don't win those battles, you can lose out on upgrades and sort of power point upgrades and such. So yeah, that's tricky. So yeah, losing dream combat, it's rarely fatal, and your power score is usually sort of restored after the combat. But losing in a dream combat can mean, like I say, you miss these bonuses to your power score that will no doubt assist you later on. Dream combat with Ishtra and his second-in-command Morpheus is slightly different, meaning that you stand a better chance against them, so it's a little bit easier. The rest of the book's design is better, and this adventure offers 2 ways to victory, which is quite cool. Allows for a bit of replayability as well. One victory is to gather several items, like I say, throughout the book. They're all hidden, they have all these numbers associated to them, and the other way is to sort of gather up all these power points to bump up your score enough to take on Ishtra in the dream world of combat. So yeah, some new mechanics there, which aid this book. And it leads on to the adventure sheet, which is here. And as usual, you've got your skill, stamina, and luck. And you've got a box there for your power points as well, so you can keep a record of those going up and down throughout the book's journey. You've got your equipment as well. There's not an awful lot to collect in this one, but there are a few items and a few essential items if you're going to complete the book in one particular way over the other. And your potion as well, whichever one you choose. And then you've got your notes and your provisions as well. Your provisions, like I say, you don't start with any, but you can pick up some as you go through the wood. And the notes, yeah, just for sort of making calculations and trying to solve the puzzles and trying to get those references for later on in the book. Okay, artwork. So the artwork for this book, like I say, was Ian Miller. There was an interview with Mr. Miller where he said, I shall quote this: "I only did one set of interior images, and as I recall, this was a trouble-free experience. I didn't choose any more interior work after this, and was never asked again after Phantoms of Fear. So you can draw what conclusions you like from that." And so it's a bit odd because he has a very unique style. He did the artwork for Citadel of Chaos as well, and I always remember sort of liking that quite a lot. But it's strange that he wasn't chosen again. So I don't. Maybe there was something more to it. I don't know. But yeah. So what really brings this book to life is Ian Miller's disturbingly brilliant artwork. He really captures the evil chaos of Ishtra's nightmarish powers and the weirdness of the dream sequences. And throughout this book, as the blight extends through Afan Forest, the artwork really captures that. You know, you have these kind of epic landscapes and these forest interiors, and everything's a little bit twisted, a little bit gnarled, very dark, as it becomes more and more diseased. So it's really strong artwork. A few key stages will force you to sort of backtrack through the forest, and you can sort of see as the artwork changes, it's either an improvement or it's getting further into the blight and therefore further weirder. But his artwork's very strong, and yeah, like I say, very well suited to this adventure. It also helps that it's quite a creepy and atmospheric book anyway. His artwork kind of complements Waterfield's writing quite well, making them a really good team. The art in this book is sort of a perfect complement to the nightmarish themes and all those dreamscape environments. I've got a fave picture here. I shall read the clip to go with it, but it perfectly kind of describes this changing environment that you're surrounded by. "Empathy knows no distance, and as a wood elf, you can feel the pain of the suffering forest, even though you are still some way from it. What lies before your eyes is like a mockery of the forest you know and love. There are trees all right, although many areas have been devastated, as if by fire or by horde of careless axe-wielding dwarves. In contrast to the clarity of the air where you are, and in the pleasant valley below, the cursed region in the distance is shrouded by murky haze, which rolls and seethes with a chaotic life of its own. But your observations of this scene are cut short by a sudden harsh cry which rips the still air, silences the birds twittering in the trees above you, and sends a spurt of chill fear into your heart." Yeah, so this picture, it's kind of got this demonic twistedness to it, all these bizarre trees kind of all reaching out and faces within the branches and creatures and mouths, and it's kind of like a mismatch of bizarre, nightmarish landscape mixed with dream and real world. It's all like throughout the book. It's all like this, and it's just amazing. And you kind of can't help but be pulled into this world of Waterfields with the help of Mr. Miller's artwork. Yeah, brilliant. So likes and dislikes for this book. I love the way the book allows for a lot of exploration. Certainly the first half is very open world, and it's only when you get into Ishtra's domain does it become slightly more linear. But of course, you've got the dream world and the real world versions of that layer. So it's kind of like two adventures in one. The first part does let you roam about, like I say, in the forest, which is quite nice. Persistently going the wrong way or the wrong direction will result in being turned around. So there's no sort of instant deaths. There are a couple, but there's none for to punish you for sort of exploring as such. A few key stages will force you to take a certain path, but this works in the same way as earlier and allows you kind of to discover previously unknown parts of the forest or dungeon, depending on where you are, rather than sending you around in circles. I love the future dream sequence that you have. I'll read it to you. It's a part sort of towards the beginning of the book, and it describes like a future vision, and it's very clever. So this is what it says. "For a while, nothing happens. Then you see the most bizarre and unrealistic series of images. You are standing in the middle of a sort of ravine, whose sides are made out of, well, you suppose they are buildings of some sort, since many weirdly dressed humans are coming and going through the doors, but you cannot even begin to guess what the stone buildings are made of. They are filled with unnatural lights as well. And the worst thing is that they tower over the sky and threaten to fall on everyone's heads. You shout to the strange people to run, but it soon becomes clear they can neither see nor hear you. You can see, but you cannot hear. You are surrounded by rush, and it all takes place in eerie silence. Then a new horror becomes apparent. The smooth paths you are standing on are suddenly filled by dozens of monsters. They are made of metal and glass, and it seems that they move at terrifying speed. Each of them has at least one of the humans in it, who are obviously prisoner and often have grim, tortured expressions on their faces. You wake up from this nightmare. You can bear no more of it. Is this some other world altogether, or is this the future of Titans? Of course, it's describing all the vehicles on roads in our world. And the people trapped inside are obviously the drivers and passengers of these vehicles. So it's a really nice kind of way of showing that there is a tenuous link, maybe between Titan and our world. So yeah, very cool. And the book's littered with those kind of dreams and connections to other worlds. So yeah, I love the originality, all the locations and the encounters in this book. The forest is kind of it's vibrant, it's full of life, full of animals, full of people wandering about. With a few encounters, you meet a crazy adventurer who becomes your companion. This adventurer is kind of like an ex-adventurer. It's quite a cool feature linking to Phantoms of Fear. It's kind of connected to some other books as well, which is good. I love to see sort of fighting fantasy crossover occasionally where other people are mentioned from other stories, other places, or other events. That's always a good way of sort of creating continuity across this series. Fun facts for this book. In reference 98, you meet these pixies, and they mention the Riddling Reaver from Steve Jackson's book and from a couple of other books, actually. So he shows up, he makes an appearance. And then again in reference 178, you have this dream of Yaz-Tromo. So obviously we all remember Yaz-Tromo emerging from a tall white tower on the edge of a forest, which is obviously his tree house, isn't it, outside Forest of Doom. And then again, there's this, I think it's reference 203, you dream of a fighting arena, battling to death, and there's this nobleman running the combat who plans to appoint a victor, his champion, in the contest, and will give him a chance to have the last laugh over his brother, which is obviously Trial of Champions. So there's a sort of link there to some of the other books. This warrior that you make friends with, on reference 215, Eric Runeaxe is his name. So he lost his desire for adventuring, he tells you, after ensuing the Maze of Zagor, which is obviously the first book, The Warlock of Firetop Mountain. So that's where the Maze of Zagor is. So yeah, that's the setting of Warlocks. All these really nice kind of tie-ins, all within this one book. Kind of keeps you in that world of Titan, and it's excellent for continuity. So yeah, I love that. That's a really good feature. The book also has 2 different successful endings, like I mentioned. And at one point during the adventure, you are able to flip between the real world and the dream world. And paragraphs are used to mark these. So every time you see an asterisk for the real world and a hashtag for the dream world, so you can, when you see these characters, you can kind of flip between the 2 worlds. Interestingly, the placement of the illustrations in this book match Masks of Mayhem, which is kind of unusual with regard to the paragraph numbers on all but 2 occasions. So that's either a freaky coincidence or it was planned that way. I don't know why it would be, but it's a bit weird. This is one of the few books where the character actually states his name as well. So like I mentioned, rather than being nameless throughout the entire adventure like you usually are, a bit like Appointment with Fear, where you get your name, so you get your name in this book as well. Now, there's a couple of errors. Nothing too bad. There's no game breakers or anything. But on reference 53, reference 53 actually kills you if you lose all 3 battles that you're involved in. Now, as it's written, this just means you need to win the easy battle, the easy one, and then completely ignore the other 2, as they are technically irrelevant. So that's a little bit confusing. Almost certainly what was meant was to kill you if you lose any of the 3 battles. Well, that's certainly how I read it anyway. Reference 309 is flawed also in multiple ways and will accomplish only that the player dies or you die. So yeah, when you get to reference 309, it'd be interesting to see what your thoughts are on that. I think it's a bit of an error, but maybe not. Right, let's summarise this book and then we'll give it a score out of 10. This has to be one of the most ambitious fighting fantasy books ever in terms of structure, or certainly up to this point, and construction as well. It must have been a major undertaking for Mr. Waterfield to keep track of obviously the reality and dream crossovers. So when writing it, which is like key to the book's narrative, so it must have been a really hard thing to keep track of, because of course it would throw you out of the immersion if you were in a dream world and then there's an error and you suddenly find yourself in the real world. So that would have been a real undertaking from Mr. Waterfield to actually achieve. The adventure is split into two parts. First half is kind of like the information equipment gathering throughout the romp through this Athen forest. And the second half is kind of like the trawl through the dungeon, the underworld dungeon, Ishtra's lair, as you make your way through his domain and eventually track him down to his cave. Part one is kind of fairly generic, forest with relatively few perils, just getting you used to the mechanics of this adventure. And once you're used to that, you can sort of carry on with the rest of the game book. And as you progress, the forest kind of becomes an increasingly less green, less pleasant place to be as the blight kind of spreads through the domain. And of course, the creatures become more aggressive as well. So they start off quite placid, as you would imagine. And as you get closer to Ishtra's domain, they get more and more aggressive, more and more twisted. The second half is where the real cleverness and ambition of Waterfield's book comes across. And once you enter Ishtra's domain, you have the option to be either in the real world or the dream world, and you can even switch between the two, like I say. Throughout the adventure, every time you see these special characters. And the dream world part is very hard to map due to its dreamlike nature, as you would expect, but the real world version is basically a large maze, therefore a lot easier to map. Trying to map the dream world alone would be tough. If you decide to switch between the worlds randomly, it's going to be even more hard. So I have to admit, when I finished this book, I stayed in the real world, I didn't cross over, and I just mapped the real world as it was and completed it that way. So, depending on whether you finally decide to face Ishtra in the dream world or the real world, there are two possible versions of the final battle as well, where two different outcomes, which adds even more replayability, really good last ability. There's also a nice continuity feature where a group of dark elves that you dispatch of in the first part of this book get mentioned in the second part as they haven't come back from their food raiding mission, because you killed them. So that's quite a clever little kind of bit of continuity, which everybody loves in these books, right? Phantoms of Fear is a good fighting fantasy book, gorgeous artwork by Ian Miller, good strong prose by Waterfield. But when you get into the substance of the game book, it's a bit of a mixed bag, I found anyway. The dream stuff is quite interesting in principle, but it needs a bit of a rethink with the dream combat, and essentially providing two parallel versions of the last dungeons eats up quite a lot of the pages in this book, which is not a problem, but that's where a lot of the references go to. You're in the same place, but you're just in two different realities. The book is more sort of forgiving to having a low score for your stats, so it's not like those books where high stats are important. This one, it's not so important. Luck is not used that much, to be honest, and being unlucky is rarely fatal. The enemies are not too tough, but a skill of at least 9, I would say, is probably best. The book has a few instant deaths towards the end, a rather unfair puzzle called The Trial of Ghosts, which I'll put up here. Those of you who have tried to do this one will know where I'm coming from. It kind of involves you having to choose a route at random across a playing board. You choose the wrong route and you die, but there's no need to do this puzzle to beat the book, so it's not all bad. Phantoms has its share of design problems as well, but they're not really severe. It doesn't really make the book less enjoyable. It's just challenging, which is absolutely fine with me. Robin Waterfield, his style captures the weird kind of chaotic feeling of this book quite well, and his dream sequences are very atmospheric. The secondary characters could have done with a bit more development, perhaps, particularly Morpheus, who was an interesting villain whose motives for serving Ishtra are never really explained or stated. To summarise, The Phantoms of Fear is very well written and illustrated gamebook. It allows lots of replayability. The problems with dream combat stop it from being sort of a classic, but it is still better than your average gamebook and well worth a read. Waterfield really excels in this one with his descriptive writing. And I found a lot of his books are like this. This one, I would say, is his top book, where he goes all out in describing this world. The background is extensive, so you get a good idea of what you're getting yourself into. The first half of the book is very rich in how Waterfield describes Afan forests. And then, of course, as you get closer to Ishtra's domain, the blight takes over, and you get to see that in his prose. It kind of ever so slowly becomes more of a horrible place to sort of travel through until the very end, when you get to his dungeon, and then it's knives out. But yeah, all in all, I would give this book a high 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. It's got lots of interesting game mechanics in it, and you can really find yourself immersed in this world that he's created. So yeah, 7 out of 10. Yeah, that's the review. Hope you liked that. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Put some comments in. Always good to read your comments. I always try to reply as many as I don't have that many subscribers that I can't reply to them all. So I always try to reply to as many as I can. And if you think someone might like this, maybe share the channel out as well. And the next book we'll review is book 29. That's Midnight Rogue, which is an absolute classic back in the city of thieves, Port Blacksand. So catch me in that one. Take care, and we'll see you soon.